Pretty spiritual.
Have you ever wanted something so badly, tried to stay positive, but felt like something was stopping you?
Sometimes the biggest thing standing in our way between us and what's possible isn't something that's external to us, it's the beliefs that we carry within us.
Today we're exploring limiting beliefs, where they come from and how they can influence creating our own reality. Hi, I'm Shay.
And I'm Amy.
And welcome back to another episode of
Pretty Spiritual.
So, hun, what are limiting beliefs?
So, limiting beliefs are deep beliefs that we hold about ourselves, about what we deserve, about what we believe is possible.
Mm-hmm.
And they're often created from past experiences, things that have happened to us throughout our lives, the conditions that we've been brought up in, things that we've been told during childhood, things that we've maybe experienced through life. All of these different scenarios can contribute to us forming limiting beliefs.
And they're quite sneaky, aren't they? Because I know that when I have limiting beliefs, I don't necessarily recognise that I have them. And they show up for people in different ways. But I mean, typically, limited beliefs look like, oh, I'm not good enough to achieve this, or I'll never have this because of X, Y, Z, and I'm not lucky enough to be able to make that kind of money. Those are kind of your standard limiting beliefs, aren't they?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think a huge part of having limiting beliefs is actually being able to differentiate between what is actual fact and what is a limiting belief. Because then you can actually do something about it.
Yeah.
So, hun, where do you think limiting beliefs usually come from?
So limiting beliefs a lot of the time are things that we have either been kind of brought up around in our childhood or kind of social conditioning. So we're told that we won't achieve certain things, or maybe not as drastic as that. Maybe we've just been told to aim a bit lower and we're aiming too high, because when we're younger we have this amazing imagination and there's no limit. We think we can achieve so much, and then life seems to knock us down a few pegs for a lot of people. So a lot of the time it's from childhood, or it's from experiences when you're younger and you're more impressionable in the workplace, for example. People are knocked back, or they've been told that they're too eager, so you end up naturally putting up those walls, which are those limiting beliefs. It could be things for like a relationship you've had and it hasn't necessarily been a great relationship, so you've always been told that you're this, negative connotations, and then you suddenly start believing these things that you're being told, which is actually either opinion or just someone being mean, and you start believing those things about yourself.
I completely agree with that. And I actually just think about how many like celebrity stories that I've listened to, where I'm going to give a footballer as an example. You hear sometimes about these people that have gone on to do amazing things, and I think a lot of the time when they then reflect on their childhood and when they were at school, you've heard stories of people where they've said I wasn't very academic, my teachers would tell me that I wasn't gonna amount to anything, and all of these really quite negative limiting beliefs that they probably took on because of things that they were told during their childhood, and then they've actually gone on to really make something of themselves or make something of their lives. But I think that's an example of how, like you were saying, when you're at a really impressionable age, having one teacher tell you, I don't know, you're not very good at something, or you're not going to amount to something like that, that leaves such a massive impression on a child. And some people go on to do amazing things, which is great, but other people would store that as a limiting belief,
and be held back
that could
by
really that could completely hinder them in their life.
Agreed. And I think a lot of us have these experiences and probably don't realise until it comes to it. I mean, I remember being told by family members I was not going to amount to anything because I chose not to go to university. I dropped out of college, and it was like, whoa. And this comes from a side of my family that very, very focused on that kind of education, being the best of the best, and it's a different country, so it's different cultural ways. And I felt like really ashamed. I was like, oh my God, they must think that I'm worth like nothing. And it's like, well, I don't care, because I still had that fiery person in me that was like, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
But now looking at me and looking at how successful I actually am, and I didn't need that, it's actually quite inspiring for other people to be like, okay, I don't need to go to university to do this if I want to be successful. I think the boat's changed a bit in that kind of topic anyway. But yeah, that was a limiting belief of mine for a very long time, that I would never amount to anything in my work life because I didn't go to university. And then I eventually broke down those barriers, and yeah.
I love that. That's amazing that you were able to recognise that. And like, what things did you do to, I suppose, recognise that limiting belief, but also to then like move past it?
I mean, it sat with me for a really, really long time, and I just kept pushing through and moving to another job and watching my salary grow and things like that. That was a big indicator for me that okay, my salary is increasing, I'm not being held back, I'm not sat on like minimum wage or really low income. And then yeah, I don't know if it's the area that I work in, but it's probably the same for you, because I know you didn't go to university either. And I realised I am capable, and it's all down to experience and who I am as a person. There wasn't necessarily a big shift, I just realised I am capable.
I love that. That's amazing. And I think a lot of people will be able to kind of resonate with that. And I think it kind of boils down to believing that anything is actually possible for you. And I think when we go through like challenging periods in life, a lot of limiting beliefs, I think, can show up as negative self-talk. So if you're trying to put your efforts into something and then you get that voice that's like, oh, it's not going to work out, or you're not going to be able to do this, or I think a lot of that can then sometimes stem from a limiting belief that you've either learned or from something that you've been told in life. And I think the amazing thing about limiting beliefs is it is absolutely possible to move past them.
Yeah, and you do, as a spiritual person anyway, you are constantly working on things like your shadows, your limiting beliefs, and they can pop up whenever. When I was training to do my massage, I remember being so full of limiting beliefs, like my joints aren't going to allow me to do this, why am I even paying the money to learn? I'm just not going to be able to do it. And I think I even said to you, I was like, I'm just a bit concerned, like it's a waste of money, and I know I want to do this and I have a calling to do this, but what if it's not feasible? What if it's not something I can do? And those are limiting beliefs, and they're recent ones, if anything. So there's always different ones that can pop up from deep down where you don't expect they're going to come up, and they do. And I ended up just throwing myself into it and proving to myself that I can do it. And yes, there are some limitations physically for me, but I can do it, and I can do it to a high standard. And I think, yeah,
that's amazing. And I suppose in that situation, that was a limiting belief showing up as like self-doubt, wasn't it? Because it's almost like, well, am I going to be able to do this, and how is it even going to be possible? But I think having the awareness to be like, this is actually just a limiting belief, this isn't a fact, I think can be really, really beneficial. And I think that can be hard for some people as well, because if it's something that you have believed for a long time, something since childhood, sometimes you almost do see it as like fact, you know, because you don't necessarily think, oh, that is a limiting belief of mine. You just think, yeah, that's not possible, and you almost like write it off. So I think being able to kind of recognize limiting beliefs is probably one of the first steps that people can go through to then start to be able to like work through them.
And it can be so hard to recognize them because they can be so deep rooted that you don't realize, and you don't recognize them as a limiting belief. So
yeah, definitely.
So how would you say that limiting beliefs affects manifestation? Because I know that we did our episode on manifestation last week, and we wanted to go into this side of it.
Yeah. So when we were talking about manifestation, we were talking about how it's really about your you know, your thoughts, your emotions and your actions all coming into alignment to create your reality. And I think the way that limiting beliefs show up is often as doubt, because you'll be thinking, well, I want to do this, but can I really do this? And I think when you let limiting beliefs get the better of you, they can act as a blocker for your manifestations, because you're essentially, you know, if you have a belief that, for example, I don't know, let's say you wanted to manifest £5,000, right? And you're like, okay, I'm thinking about it, I'm aligning with the vibration, and then you need to take the action to try and make that happen as well. If there's a limiting belief that that isn't going to be possible for you, and you're like, I don't think I actually really can do that, I can't manifest £5,000, stuff like this just doesn't happen to me, you know, these are some of the limiting beliefs that might be cropping up for you. The chances are you're not going to see the opportunities that actually come up to be able to get you from where you are to that £5,000. And like we mentioned in that episode, it's not always about somebody posting a £5,000 check through your door. That can happen, and that's amazing. But it could be you're self-employed and there's an opportunity that comes up where you can share your work with other people, and that's going to generate £5,000 for you. It could be, you know, anything. There's lots of different opportunities that could come through for you. But your limiting beliefs will potentially prevent you from A, believing that it's really possible, even though you want it, and B, taking the aligned action to actually get you there, because the doubt will start to creep in. So I think it plays a huge part in whether or not your manifestations will come to reality.
100%. And I think as well, the way we're describing it makes it so obvious that we would have these thoughts. Your subconscious is creeping in without you realizing, so of course your manifestation isn't necessarily going to work. So you have to be completely open to the possibilities and the opportunities that are going to be coming your way through manifestation.
I completely agree. And I think something that's really important is recognizing a limiting belief as soon as you start to think about it.
Throw it in the bin.
That can be really hard. Yeah. And almost not letting that really, okay, recognizing it as a limiting belief and then being like, I'm not going to let that completely derail me. So you're sort of acknowledging it and being like, okay, I've had this thought. And like you say, you're kind of just throwing it in the bin. Because the other thing is, limiting beliefs, like anything, affect our energy, and they affect our nervous system and the way that our body operates. And I think we talked in the manifestation episode all about how part of manifesting is about aligning your vibration to the things that you want. And if you are letting your kind of body and your energy field be ruled by these limiting beliefs, it's going to be really difficult to allow that to actually happen and to come to fruition, because your body's just not going to believe it. And, you know, anytime that something maybe knocks it, or like you were saying, you know, a bit of time has passed and no activity has happened, you're going to feel that in your whole body, and you're going to be like, you're almost going to end up blocking your own, what you're asking for. So it's like not letting that kind of rule your whole nervous system.
Yeah, because if you're then sat thinking about no activity, nothing's happened yet, some people might start getting stressed. They might start thinking, well, this isn't working. You start going down that negative hole, and that's when you start blocking all of your manifestation. Yeah,
you lower your vibration. You start, you know, your whole body, not just in your mind, but your whole body starts believing that that's not possible for you. And yeah, that's when we start spiraling.
Yeah. How do you think someone can change their perception of a belief that they've probably held for years? I know that we're probably talking about ones that people are very aware of at this point.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is recognizing that something actually is a belief rather than fact. I think that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing is really doing some inner work on that and trying to understand, okay, well, where is this belief coming from? Like, where has it stemmed from? Is this something that I was taught from a young age? Is this something that I've kind of imposed on myself? And really just getting to the bottom of that limiting belief, and then doing some work on trying to shift that. Maybe even thinking about times where this limiting, things that have maybe happened in your life or even in other people's lives that have proven that that limiting belief isn't true. So you're kind of like rationalizing it and being like, okay, I've been thinking X, Y, Z, but actually there've been lots of occasions in my life where that hasn't been true at all. So you're kind of like coaching yourself through it, and you're doing the work to be like, okay, I'm actually going to rewire this. And instead of having this as a limiting belief, I'm going to be like, no, this is a limiting belief, and actually I've got the ability to change it, and I can think about this in a more positive way, and I can believe that anything is possible rather than this. And you're sort of like, I always like kind of imagine them as almost like this restriction of like this little box that it's like keeping you where you are. And it can take a lot of time to kind of completely remove the box, but almost what you're trying to do is like expand it outwards, so that you're sort of going, okay, I've realized that that's not fact, it's a limiting belief, so I'm going to move it outwards. And then it's like, okay, actually there was that occasion where this thing did happen, so actually, yeah, that's not necessarily true. And you're sort of like trying to get to a point where you're like expanding your field for more of what you want to come in, and being less kind of caged and restricted by the limiting beliefs.
That's a perfect explanation.
Thanks.
Well done, hun.
Thanks,
Don't know what to say now. Kind of nailed that one.
Oh, I love it. So, hun, do you believe it's possible to really desperately want something, but to subconsciously block that from coming in?
100%. Yeah, because I've done it myself. So when I finished my massage therapy, obviously had already done all my healing, I wanted to look at setting up that side of my business and taking on clients. But I remember speaking with you about this, and I was getting really stressed because I didn't want to go to a salon, because it meant me trying to fill days that I was renting the salon, instantly having that overhead, time away from my family, and I work as well. I'm full-time at that point, and I have my other business as well. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, me going to a salon is going to take, I'm going to have no time, and I'm not going to be able to do what I want to be able to do, basically. And that was my limiting belief, that what I wanted to be true was not possible. What I wanted was a space of my own in my garden, so that I could be at home, I could have clients come when it suited me, and it could fit around my day-to-day life, my working life, my family, etc. And then there was the blocker of, well, that's going to cost a lot of money. And I was like, well, where am I going to just pull? It was like £5,500 basically, because I needed groundwork doing and whatnot. And I was like, where am I going to pull that from? That's not going to happen. That's a pipe dream. I'll just have to sit and save for months. And even though I want to get this up and going like ASAP, so maybe I will have to give up my time to my family. Or something needs to give somewhere. And I sat there and I realised I had just talked myself out of manifesting this space for myself within seconds. I'd gone through all the scenarios. I'd spent then days sulking about it and moaning, I just want my own space. I remember saying to you, it would just be so much easier if I had an extra room in my house, or I could just do this. And I'm not exactly going to go to my partner and be like, by the way, I'm taking £5,500 out of savings because I want to do this. Like, that felt a bit reckless. I wanted to do it myself. And I sat there and I did create a vision board, and I started writing down what that would look like, what the savings would look like, and how quickly I could get that pod, and what income that would generate for me, what my time looks like as well, and how that would be split amongst everything else that I do. And things started to feel a bit better. So I started to align myself with, okay, this is going to happen. I'm going to make it happen, maybe not as quick as I want. Within a month, I bought that pod.
Yeah,
I did, didn't I?
You did.
I texted you and I was like, so I bought my pod.
Yeah.
I've hired a groundsman. I then had to wait. I bought it. I then had to wait a month for them to do the groundwork, because obviously you have to book in for something. But I made that happen. That pod was in there within a 2-month period.
That is so amazing.
Yeah, and that was because I did my normal thing of going through all the scenarios, things that were stopping me from doing this, and this is never going to happen. Whereas me, I'm going to have to sacrifice more of my time, be more spread thin, and maybe I should just give up on this dream. To sort your head out, let's figure out a plan.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's such a good example as well, because you've literally gone from, like you said, like all of the reasons why it's not going to work, why it can't work, and then being like, right, actually, let's flip this. Let's talk about all the things that I can practically do to make it work. And I think in doing that, going back to what we were saying about how that feels in your body as well, as soon as you've realised this is absolutely possible, these are some of the things that I can physically do to make it possible, not only are you like believing that in your mind, but your whole energy about it will have changed. Because instead of you thinking like this is like a problem, it's changing it to this is a possibility, and then it happens.
Exactly. And I remember sitting there, I was in front of my laptop when I started to plan, and I was like, right, you are a girl that gets what she wants. There is not a single time where someone said, no, that's not possible, that you've gone, I'm going to do it myself anyway.
Yeah.
And that's been my whole life. If I want something, I get it.
Yeah.
I sort it. Things happen. And I gave myself a big talking to. And yeah, I made it happen, and it happened way quicker than I anticipated, because I did open myself up to the possibilities. And those possibilities there wasn't just $5.5 grand handed to me to do it. I didn't take it from my savings.
Yeah.
I worked for that money, and the opportunities that came my way, it just naturally came in. And it's so crazy, because I had the exact amount of money for the groundwork and the garden pod.
At exactly the right time.
At exactly the right time. I had the exact amount of money I needed.
And that is like the best example of how manifesting can actually happen and how it does work, as long as you're aware of your limiting beliefs and you basically throw them in the bin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, I love that for you. I love it. Love it.
So, hun, what's a limiting belief that you have held previously, and how did you go about changing your mindset?
So I think a limiting belief that I held for so many years was all about success and career and what that looked like. And I kind of went into work from quite a young age, fell into kind of a career path, and then started working in the corporate world, progressed my career over many years. And I believed that was the one and only way, really, to have a successful career, to earn the kind of salary and money that I wanted to earn, and to help other people as well. I thought that was almost the only path. And I was kind of naive and a little bit blind to opportunities outside of that. Even though I've got friends who run their own businesses, and I know of other people that have been successful in many other ways, I think I subconsciously just believed that wasn't possible for me, that wasn't an option for me. And I went through a period last year where I was like, do you know what? The career that I'm in just isn't serving me anymore. I'm not getting from it what I want. From like a filling my cup point of view, you know, I wasn't working with the people that I really wanted to be working with. I wasn't having the impact that I wanted to be having. And that really forced me to start thinking about other options. And I really had to change my mindset and on what I believed was possible at that point, because I started thinking, okay, well, you know, how do I go about changing my career? What could that look like? I'm only in my 30s, but like, am I too old to start training in new things? Like, you have all of these thoughts that come in that are almost keeping you stuck. And I think it's having the awareness of like, but no, you know, for me it was like, but lots of people do that. You know, lots of people change their career in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s. Lots of people make big life changes at all, you know, at all ages. Like, your age is irrelevant really. And I had to really like coach myself through all of these limiting beliefs. And you know, since then I have set up my own business, and my business is doing really well at the moment. And, you know, I've kind of completely done a like complete flip of what I believed. Complete 360 really. Because I'm now doing all of the things that I once thought were not possible for me. But it was starting to see them, instead of like creating problems for myself, it was seeing them as possibilities. Yeah. And I think when it's something like a career change, or, you know, something that feels like a very big life decision and a life change, it seems so huge that often the limiting beliefs and kind of all of those things can feel really overwhelming, because it's not just one thing. It's like an accumulation of what you've believed for, you know, many, many years. And I think in that situation, it's really about taking it one step at a time and being like, okay, what's one thing? So for me, it was like, what's one thing that I could do to move me closer from where I am to that? Okay, well, I know that I want to learn how to do this, so let's look into training, let's book training, let's just book the training as the first step.
Which is exactly what you did.
Which is what I did. And so it's sort of like creating that pathway, rather than thinking that you have to do everything at once, because that's when it can feel really, really overwhelming. But you know, it's just working through each of those things. And you know, I still have to challenge myself, like as somebody that's now a business owner, that you know, for the first time in my life, there's lots of things that crop up on a daily and weekly basis that I hold limiting beliefs about, and I'm constantly having to challenge myself on that and be like, hold on a minute, is this actual fact, or is this me blocking things for myself? And if it's me blocking things for myself, it's like, okay, what do I need to work on? How can I kind of expand my capacity so that I realize that actually that is now possible for me? So a lot of it is similar to with manifesting. A lot of it is about changing your mindset, and it's also about taking the aligned action as well. And I think, yeah, the same goes for manifesting, but also for working through your limiting beliefs.
Love that.
So, Hun, if somebody feels like they are really struggling with a limiting belief, or they might not even recognise it as a limiting belief, but there's something in their life that they feel is really holding them back from moving forward and getting what they want, what are some practical things that they can do right now to try and change that?
So the first thing that I would do is sit down with a pen and paper and literally write down, what do I want but can't have? Or feel that I can't, sorry. What do I want but feel I can't have? Because we don't want to say can't have, because you can have anything that you want. And then the second thing I would do is ask myself the question, what belief is underneath that? Why can't I have that? Or why do I feel I can't have that? And then you have your limiting belief. And then you want to sit and look at that limiting belief. And it might be multiple limited beliefs. There may be lots of reasons, and you want to take one thing out and replace it with something empowering. So that's just a very, very small exercise you can do. But then you could also sit there and sit with yourself, align yourself, and you could start visualizing having that thing that you want, whether it's a house, whether it's a garden pod, you know, which is what I did. I sat there and visualized, okay, I can make this happen. And you start to align your energy towards that goal, and you start to shift things, and naturally sometimes limited beliefs can come away. I would definitely do the exercise that we've just spoke about, but I would definitely look at visualization as well, because putting yourself in the situation you want to be is so powerful.
Definitely. And I think that could work in any situation, and you could come back to that at any time as well, because it might be that if there's something you're trying to manifest, that you understand that you've got a limiting belief, you work through it, you go through, you know, replacing that with something empowering, a few days later you might come up against another limiting belief. So I think it's something that you can literally like rinse and repeat and go through that as often as you feel like you need to.
Definitely. I know we would love to hear about other people's experiences with overcoming limiting beliefs, or if you've tried that exercise that we've just discussed, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear it.
Definitely. I think limiting beliefs is something that everybody will come up against at some point in their lives. So any recommendations and suggestions will be very, very welcomed.
Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Pretty Spiritual.
If you've enjoyed hanging out with us, then don't forget to like, subscribe and follow along on our platforms to be the first to receive any updates.
We hope to see you on Tuesday the 28th of July for the next episode of Pretty Spiritual.
Pretty spiritual.